millennia. Chapter 2. The Neolithic Revolution, circa 10,000 BCE. The origins of inequality. The story of human civilization is inextricably linked to technological innovation. From the earliest stone tools to the development of the internet, each technological breakthrough has pushed humanity forward, but it has also created divisions. The Neolithic Revolution, which occurred around 10,000 BCE, represents one of the most significant technological shifts in human history. This revolution, marked by the transition from hunting and gathering to agriculture and settlement, laid the foundation for many of the inequalities that persist today. Those who adopted agriculture gained unprecedented control over resources, while those who did not found themselves marginalized or displaced. This chapter explores how the Neolithic Revolution serves as the first example of technological inequality and its profound impact on human society. The pre-Neolithic world, equality among hunter-gatherers. Before the Neolithic Revolution, human societies were predominantly hunter-gatherers. These groups were generally small, mobile, and egalitarian. Archaeological evidence suggests that in these early societies resources were shared relatively equally, and social hierarchies were minimal. Hunter-gatherer groups relied on cooperation for survival, as the success of hunting and foraging was unpredictable. The concept of wealth accumulation or land ownership was virtually non-existent. This lifestyle persisted for tens of thousands of years, allowing humans to spread across the globe. The reliance on a diverse array of wild plants and animals meant that hunter-gatherers were deeply connected to their environment. They followed seasonal patterns, moving to where resources were most abundant. The mobility and flexibility of these groups meant that no single person or family could dominate others through the accumulation of resources. However, as populations grew and climates changed, particularly after the end of the last ice age, new pressures began to emerge. The abundance of wild resources became less predictable, and in certain regions, humans started experimenting with ways to control their food supply. This experimentation laid the groundwork for the Neolithic Revolution, which would change the structure of human society forever. The agricultural breakthrough, a technological leap. The Neolithic Revolution marked a dramatic shift in the way humans lived and interacted with their environment. Agriculture at its core is the domestication of plants and animals for human use. This technology enabled early humans to produce food surpluses, which in turn allowed for larger or more stable populations. Instead of constantly moving in search of food, agricultural societies could settle in one place, leading to the development of permanent villages and eventually cities. The development of agriculture likely happened independently in several regions of the world, including the Fertile Crescent in the Middle East, the Yangtze and Yellow River valleys in China, Mesoamerica, and the Andes in South America. In each case, early farmers domesticated local species of plants and animals, tailoring their techniques to their specific environments. This new way of life provided significant advantages to those who adopted it. Agricultural societies could produce far more food than hunter-gatherer groups, allowing for population growth and the creation of surpluses that could be stored for future use or traded with neighboring groups. As a result, these societies began to develop complex social structures, including specialized labor, social hierarchies, and systems of governance. However, the benefits of agriculture were not universally shared. While farming societies flourished, those who continued to rely on hunting and gathering were increasingly pushed to the margins. This dynamic marked the beginning of a fundamental divide between those who had access to advanced food production technologies and those who did not, a pattern that would be repeated throughout history. The rise of social inequality. One of the most profound consequences of the Neolithic Revolution was the rise of social inequality. In hunter-gatherer societies, equality was maintained by the need for cooperation and mobility. There were no permanent settlements or fixed resources, so no one could accumulate significant wealth or power over others. Agriculture changed this dynamic completely. With the advent of farming, land became the most valuable resource. Those who controlled the most fertile land could produce the largest surpluses, which allowed them to gain influence and wealth. Over time, this led to the emergence of social hierarchies, with landowners and farmers at the top and laborers who had little or no access to land at the bottom. The division between those who controlled resources and those who did not marked the beginning of class structures that would dominate human society for millennia. In addition to economic inequalities, the Neolithic revolution also led to the emergence of gender inequality. In many early farming societies, men were primarily responsible for plowing and managing large-scale agricultural operations, while women's roles became more focused on domestic tasks. This division of labor reinforced patriarchal structures, with men gaining greater authority over land, resources, and social decisions. The relative equality of hunter-gatherer groups, where both men and women contributed equally to the survival of the group, began to erode in agricultural societies. The surpluses generated by agriculture also enabled the rise of specialized labor. For the first time in human history, not everyone had to be involved in food production. This allowed certain individuals to focus on other tasks, such as crafting tools, developing new technologies, or governing the community. While this specialization contributed to the growth of culture and civilization, it also created new forms of inequality. Priests, rulers, and craftsmen held positions of power, while peasants and laborers, who worked the land but had no control over its resources, were often relegated to lower social ranks. Conflict between farmers and hunter-gatherers. As agricultural societies expanded, they inevitably came into contact with hunter-gatherer groups who had not adopted farming. These encounters were often marked by conflict, as farmers sought to control more land for cultivation, pushing hunter-gatherers out of their traditional territories. In many cases, agricultural societies had significant technological and demographic advantages over hunter-gatherer groups. Farming allowed for larger, more organized populations, and the surpluses produced by agriculture could support standing armies. Hunter-gatherers, on the other hand, were typically fewer in number and less organized, making it difficult for them to resist the encroachment of farming communities. This dynamic is seen in the archaeological record. For example, in Europe, the spread of agriculture from the Near East gradually displaced the indigenous hunter-gatherer populations. Studies of ancient DNA have shown that the first farmers who arrived in Europe were genetically distinct from the hunter-gatherers who had lived there for millennia. As these farming societies expanded, they either assimilated or replaced the local hunter-gatherers, fundamentally altering the genetic and cultural landscape of the continent. In other regions, the transition was less violent, but no less transformative. In parts of North America, for example, indigenous hunter-gatherer groups gradually adopted agriculture through contact with neighboring farming societies. However, even in cases of peaceful adoption, the shift to agriculture brought about profound changes in social structure, resource management, and political organization. The spread of disease and the rise of cities. One of the unintended consequences of the Neolithic revolution was the spread of disease. As humans began to live in larger, denser settlements, and as they came into closer contact with domesticated animals, infectious diseases became more common. Unlike hunter-gatherer groups, who were constantly on the move and lived in small, isolated communities, agricultural societies provided the perfect conditions for diseases to spread rapidly. Diseases such as smallpox, measles, and influenza likely emerged in the early cities of the Neolithic period. These diseases, which were often transmitted from domesticated animals to humans, could devastate entire populations. However, over time, people in agricultural societies developed some immunity to these diseases, which would later give them a significant advantage in their interactions with non-agricultural groups. The rise of cities was another major consequence of the Neolithic revolution. With the ability to produce surpluses of food, agricultural societies could support larger populations, leading to the growth of permanent settlements. These settlements eventually developed into cities, which became centers of trade, culture, and political power. Cities allowed for greater social stratification, with elites living in luxury while the majority of the population worked the land or engaged in other forms of labor. The concentration of wealth and power in cities also led to the development of complex political systems, including kingships, bureaucracies, and legal codes. However, the rise of cities also exacerbated inequalities. The rural populations that produced the food surpluses were often taxed heavily by urban elites, who controlled political and military power. As cities grew in size and influence, the divide between urban elites and rural peasants became increasingly stark, laying the groundwork for the development of class-based societies. The impact of technological disparity. The Neolithic Revolution represents the first instance of technological disparity between human groups. Those who adopted agriculture gained control over their food supply, allowing them to accumulate wealth, increase their populations, and develop complex social structures. In contrast, those who continued to rely on hunting and gathering found themselves increasingly marginalized, displaced, or assimilated by farming societies. This technological divide had profound and lasting impacts on the course of human history. Agricultural societies eventually gave rise to the world's first civilizations, including Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley. These early civilizations built monumental architecture, developed writing systems, and created sophisticated legal and political institutions. Their technological superiority allowed them to dominate the surrounding regions, often subjugating or displacing less advanced groups. The inequalities that emerged during the Neolithic Revolution have persisted into the modern era. Today, the gap between those with access to technology and those without is greater than ever. The lessons of the Neolithic Revolution are clear. Technological advances, while beneficial to those who possess them, can create profound inequalities between different groups. In the context of artificial intelligence, we are witnessing the emergence of a new technological divide. Just as agriculture transformed human society 200 years ago, AI is poised to reshape the modern world. Those with access to AI will have the ability to control vast amounts of data, automate complex tasks, and optimize every aspect of their operations. Meanwhile, those without access to AI will struggle to compete, much like the hunter-gatherers who were pushed aside by early farmers. Conclusion. The Neolithic Revolution serves as a powerful reminder of the dangers of technological inequality. As agricultural societies expanded and developed, they pushed less technologically advanced groups to the margins, creating lasting social, economic, and political divisions. Today we face a similar challenge with the rise of artificial intelligence. If we do not take steps to ensure equitable access to AI, we risk creating a new era of inequality that could shape the future of humanity for generations to come. The story of the Neolithic Revolution is not just a story of technological progress. It is a story of division, conflict, and inequality. As we move forward into the age of AI, we must learn from the lessons of the past and ensure that this new technology is distributed equitably, so that no one is left behind in the next great technology.